Riley, roll the intro.
Hello and welcome to the Esports Gaming Podcast, where we try and take a relatively unknown topic and sure you know exactly what we're talking about. Today we're just going to talk about what esports are and how I got into it myself. So back in the day, I played a lot of Call of Duty with my friends. I started playing tournaments on this website called Game Battles. I was able to gain just a little bit of cash. To me at the time, about 15, 16-year-old kid, I'm playing video games every single night, spending every little bit of money I get from working at Fairway. I was able to win about $200, but in reality, I was probably down 400 something. But it was something huge for me at the time. I won a couple of tournaments with them. Got to the point where I was like, you know what? I'm going to travel. I'm going to go to a tournament that's a big name tournament. We're going to go there and we're going to win thousands of dollars. It turns out I wasn't old enough to do so, and my dream pretty much died there from actually being a esports athlete, I would say. Other than that, I've just been following since before that. But anyways, what are esports? What is it? What are esports? You type it into Google, you get esport, a multiplayer video game played competitively for spectators, typically by professional gamers. Okay, well that doesn't really break it down. Now that gaming has become more and more mainstream, this whole idea of esports is coming into the mainstream media. People are talking more and more about these guys that are, or kids, sometimes that's what they're calling them, and saying that they're making thousands and thousands of dollars, more than some people are making on their day job playing video games, and some people are just mind blown at the fact of that. So esports started a long, long time ago. Some of the biggest esports that just came out of the scene were Call of Duty in the beginning, League of Legends, which is the biggest video game played around the world. Then there's other sports like Dota 2, Counter-Strike Go, Halo, all these games that we play casually every single day. Even like Super Smash Brothers on the Nintendo Wii, the Nintendo Switch, the GameCube. Those are some of the smaller esports communities, but still, people are in those communities making money. How are they doing that? Well, there's sponsorships. Big name companies like Mountain Dew are sponsoring Optic Gaming now. There are companies sponsoring everything. Not only just gaming things, so like there's gaming chairs like DX Racer, or computer companies like NZXT or Origin. They sponsor teams because these guys, they go out, they have a team, they go to tournaments weekly, monthly, but they spend hours and hours and hours, sometimes 8 to 10 to 14 hours a day playing a video game, learning the ins and the outs. And then they go and they test their skills against each other in tournaments for thousands of dollars. The thing that got me into it the most was I played Black Ops 2 with friends, which is Call of Duty Black Ops 2, and we heard, hey, there's this guy named Optic Scumpy. Okay, he's just got a cool gamer tag, maybe, but what is he doing? Well, at the time, he was 18, 19 years old, playing professional Call of Duty, so he's practicing day after day. But they were going to tournaments, and they had a storyline behind them. They started like a documentary series, like a docu-series that is just explaining the day in the life of an esports gamer. And Scumpy would just wake up, go to the gym, drink his protein, sit down at his desk, and play Call of Duty for hours on end. Now, to my young mind, that was the best life you could ever have. You're playing video games 24/7. The thing that I get yelled at 24/7 for playing? Wow, this guy is an idol to me. Well, it turns out Scumpy was actually making more money than I previously thought. Because, to me, I'd won a couple tournaments. I was up to about $200. I'm thinking, he wins a lot of tournaments, so maybe he's got $2,000. No, these guys are playing for $1 million. That was the first $1 million tournament I remember vividly. That COD XP. There are tournaments hosted that host the top 16 teams in Call of Duty. Now, how do you get there? Well, you have to play through the open qualifier. So, pro teams that have established they're good have they have a slightly better in. They don't have to play as many games, but anybody truly could make it into this COD World League Pro League. Think of the NBA. It's the best of the best, a bunch of teams that are the best of the best, have the best talent. They know they're good, and they play it out. They have a regular season. They have the playoffs, the finals, and then they have the championship where, everything comes to fruition. They have rings, just like in esports. There's rings in Call of Duty. There's rings in Halo. There's rings in CSGO. There's big old trophies, exact same thing as any other sport. But esports do it for gamers. So the big tournament that I watched them win was Call of Duty XP, which was in a game called Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3. Now this is kind of where I would say Call of Duty as an esport took off. It was the first time that Optic Gaming they had gotten a big following on YouTube. And it was the first time when we were let into the world of an esports gamer on a daily basis. They started daily vlogging, showing what their team house looked like, just sharing their experiences in which they had on a daily basis. And they were able to win that tournament, which I believe it was $400,000. So as a team, there's 4 players on a team at the time, and that's $100,000 a piece. Factor a little bit out of that for taxes and whatnot, because obviously you got to pay taxes. And it's a pretty good chunk of cash. Where Call of Duty was now gaining more speed, more people were playing Black Ops 2. It had a pro ladder. It was the first time that in game you could play what was the skill set and the rule set for what the pros were playing. So it brought that level down to where it was reachable. You didn't have to make private lobbies anymore. You could play 4v4 and play the game modes in the maps that they could. And so from there, we're in 2019 where they changed it. Now it's no longer 4v4, it's 5v5 in a game called Call of Duty Black Ops 4. It's the first time that they switched it up. They changed the main game, which it used to be 6v6, and the pros only played 4v4. Now it's main game is 5v5, and the pros play 5v5. So that's added a whole new aspect to it. But now they also have things called franchising. That's entering a lot of esports. The Overwatch League was the first to do that, and that was where everybody on their team was a guaranteed $50,000. And they're required to have living expenses. They had food required, and they also had a exercise budget, because a lot of times people think that gamers, it's just they sit around, they've got to be unhealthy. No, what the Overwatch League is trying to do is ensure that the guys that are playing they are at peak performance in playing, as well as in health. So to me, that's pretty cool that they care enough to do that. It's just like anything else. They have training centers, just like any NFL football team or any basketball team. These guys are out there working hard, working at their game, working at their craft while staying healthy. The Call of Duty scene this year has changed a lot. They have now the CWL League, where they played tournaments, and the top 16 teams in the world are now competing in a regular season. Now, throughout the regular season, they do have open tournaments still for amateurs, much like I was back in the day, where I could show up to a tournament, play, sometimes 10s, 20s, 30 games. If you were to go to an amateur an open tournament, play all the way through the amateur bracket, play through all the way through the competitive bracket, which is where the pros are already at, and win, you would play a lot of Call of Duty. But people try and practice and practice and practice and practice to get to that point. But esports itself has just grown a lot in the last year. Call of Duty is now franchised. Overwatch, the way Overwatch was, players are making contracts. They have thing that keeps it the most interesting now is something they call roster mania. Before rosters lock, where you are headed into the final tournament, you have to have a locked roster. No more trading, no more being sly and trying to pick up the next best player right at the end of the season and just give you that extra push. No, you've got to have everything set and ready to go. So there's a lot of behind the scenes talk that goes on, just like in basketball when LeBron leaves the Cavs and heads to the Lakers. But these guys are making serious money, and it's just been fascinating to watch as I've grown up, and the sport has grown up with me, basically, to see where I watched myself win a couple $100. Felt like I was on top of the world, to these guys called Optic Gaming or FaZe Clan or Evil Geniuses or Complexity or United or anybody. There's a bunch of teams that are now have come and gone, and some have stayed, but they were able to gather 4 dudes, build a brand outside of the game that has propelled the esport, and their clout, their drive, their personalities out into the world through the means of YouTube and streaming on Twitch.tv, and they just they built their brand as well as building this sport, and it's now to the point that there are schools that have professional esports teams, and you can be on their team for Overwatch, let's say, and you can play against University of Iowa. We would play against University of Nebraska-Lincoln, or University of Wisconsin, University of Florida. These big schools are now, or Arizona State is another big one. Big schools now are investing in this because they see there's money to be made for these kids, for this sport. So I don't know if that was helpful at all. I don't know if that was interesting at all, but I just wanted to kind of run through what got me into gaming, kind of establish my credibility, show that I've been watching and following esports for years, since I was in high school, early high school kid that just played video games on every single chance I could, and of how I've followed it throughout the years and now into my senior year of college, and I still love it, and I just want to try to explain why I love it and why it's a big deal. So anyways, Riley, roll the outro, buddy.
Oh, do they have to go?
Yeah, you probably do. Anyways, thank you for tuning in to the Esports Gaming Podcast. I hope to make it less boring next time, and I'll see you soon.